开始 OK. Hi, welcome to 谢谢 Mandarin. This channel is about learning Mandarin Chinese or sharing Chinese culture. So if you are interested in these topics, you are welcome to subscribe to my channel. In this video, I want to talk about some methods that you can use when you self-study Mandarin Chinese as a beginner. Obviously, learning at a language school or going to a target country is one of the best efficient ways. At the moment though, because of the pandemic, we may not be able to go to other countries. But there is a scholarship program that the recipients may enter and study in Taiwan. I will share details about this method at the end of this video. So watch it to the end and don't miss this opportunity. Back to our topic. I have watched some videos that people have shared on YouTube about how they learn Chinese. Some are geniuses who can speak many languages, and some have been to Taiwan or China. Yet, if you are an ordinary person who just started to learn Mandarin, then what strategies can you use? Well, today I'm going to introduce you one of my students who lives in the USA and has never been to any Chinese-speaking country. He spends his free time teaching himself Chinese. He is going to share you his strategies. How can he learn Chinese from scratch?
Hi Leo，
嗨，
你可以先跟大家做一下自我介绍吗？
好啊，大家好，我是Leo，我是美国人，现在我住在 Oregon，我是从去年9月开始学习中文的，我已经学习中文学了5个月了。我开始学习中文是因为我想要去中国当一个英语老师。我觉得中文还困难，可是很有意思。
太困难了。
对对对。
But Leo, to be honest, when you reached out to me, I was so surprised that you already knew a lot of Chinese words, even though you are a beginner. So is there any tips or strategies you use can share to everybody? How did you learn Chinese from scratch?
Yeah, so I think I started studying around like September. And so basically by that point, I really only been doing 2 things, which was in the first case, I used the flashcard app, and I started with just the HSK1 vocab, and I would just sort of do that daily. And the app I use for that specifically is called Tofu Learn, and I think it's a really good flashcard app because it has a built-in Chinese dictionary. So really, you only need to put in the characters you don't know, and they will give you the pinyin, the definition, and they'll even give you audio from native speakers to use for flashcards, which is super helpful when you're starting out and just want to learn pronunciation. And then the other thing I'd been doing at that point was just watching Chinese media. And specifically, I was using a site called Little Fox, which is aimed towards Chinese learners. And it's really good because they have 5 different levels of cartoons that get progressively harder. And so they start you off right at the beginning level. And for each episode, they give you a list of all the vocab you might not know. And I would just take the words I didn't know and I put them in my flashcard app and I would learn them, and then they would show up again. Super useful. And then so once I could sort of handle more advanced shows, I started going towards shows that were aimed more at like native speakers, just very young ones, more so than learners. So there's Peppa Pig on YouTube I found pretty helpful, and there's a live stream of that. So that's a good resource. The Chinese cartoon Xi Yang Yang, which is a pleasant goat and the big bad wolf, I think. There's basically all the episodes are on YouTube for free. So those have been a good source. And then I did some limited reading too. There's choose your own adventure stories aimed at Chinese learners. at a site called WordSwing. And I found that those are pretty fun and accessible, and they also have a built-in dictionary, so that's a good way to improve your reading ability, I think.
Oh, okay. So, Leo, I wonder, why did you decide to learn pronunciation with a tutor? Why is that important? And how have my Chinese classes helped you?
Right. So I think it's really hard to learn pronunciation by yourself, particularly when you're starting out too. I think if you sort of try to teach yourself that, you'd likely end up only sort of reinforcing bad pronunciation, particularly in the beginning when I just couldn't even hear the differences between the tones. If you can't hear the differences between the tones, you're probably not saying them right either. So working with you has really been helpful in improving my pronunciation and practicing the tones, because in the beginning I know my tones are a complete mess, and I think at least you can tell what tones I'm going for, which is actually a huge improvement over where I was.
Actually, recently I noticed that when your pronunciation was not so accurate, you know how to correct yourself. And how did you do that?
Yeah, I think that's partially a function of me listening to a lot more Chinese shows and having those audio attached to my flashcards. So I have a sort of a sense of how the word should be said. And then if I say it not close to that, I at least know that I should go back and correct it. And then the other thing is working with you has given me a better sense of the pronunciation errors I tend to make, like not emphasizing my fourth tones enough. So between those two things, if I can tell I did something really off, I can just sort of go back and correct it.
All right. So my final question is there anything you would like to say to a beginner like you 5 months ago?
Yeah, I think before you start learning a language, it helps to do some research on the best ways to learn a language, and to sort of look at people who got where you want to go and then listen to their tips, because they're experts sort of not only on the language, but also the best ways to learn that language. So I found the blog Hacking Chinese to be really helpful. It has lots of links to other great resources you can use. And actually some of the resources I found through that website. I also think the YouTube channel Matt vs. Japan, he's an interesting case, because most people who've learned Chinese really well learned it by living in China, which might not be feasible right now. But he learned Japanese to a really high level without spending much time in Japan at all. And he has some really interesting tips on how to do it, and a lot of it revolves around really sort of trying to do your best to immerse yourself in the language, even if you aren't in that country. And that's been really helpful to me. Another sort of tip I have on something I would do differently if I went back is I don't think writing is a great way to spend your time when you're starting off. I think reading is, especially because so many shows have subtitles, that reading comprehension actually really helps your listening comprehension. But writing is very difficult, and now with typing, you don't need to know how to write the characters to produce them if you're just typing them. And then I think the last thing I'd say is, if you're learning it on your own, you should do your best to have fun with the language, and I really think it can be fun. Like I play a video game, and so now instead of watching streamers for that video game in English, I'll watch them in Chinese instead. And so it's something I enjoy, but I'm doing it in Chinese and I'm learning the language. And learning Chinese opens up a whole world of like shows, new books, and also an insight into sort of the culture and history, because so much is embedded in the language itself. So I think it's a lot of fun. I'd recommend it.
好，谢谢 Leo. I think this information and resources are very helpful, not only for Chinese learners, but also for those who are interested in learning other languages. Thank you so much for your sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
As I promised at the beginning of the video, here is some good news for you. Every year, the Taiwan Ministry of Education offers a number of Huayu enrichment scholarships for international students to study in Taiwan. They offer a monthly stipend of 25,000 NTD. The application period is January from February 1st to the end of March each year. But the application period at particular ROC overseas missions may vary. You can go to the website, which is english.moe.gov.tw, and choose Study in Taiwan. Click Scholarships and Huayu Enrichment Scholarship to see the application eligibility and process. Also, there is a list of Chinese language centers where you can choose to study in Taiwan. I have put a link below. You are welcome to click and download it. Well, I hope this video has been helpful for you, and I hope to see you in Taiwan one day. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have some more time, why don't you stick around and watch another Chinese lesson?